Okay, we're back, we're live, we're Think Tech Talks here on a given Wednesday, and you know what Wednesday is.
Energy.
Energy Day. This is Hawaii, the state of clean energy. You bet it is. Okay,
Always.
That's Mike Hamnet. Say hi, Mike.
Hi, folks.
He's co-chair of the Energy Policy Forum, and that's Sharon Moriwaki. She's the other co-chair of the Hawaii Energy Policy
Right.
Forum. So which is more co than co.
Co.
I just work for Sharon.
Okay, today we're going to talk about Energy Day 2014, which took place on July 22nd at Laniakea. It was a ridiculous number of attendees showed up. It was almost a quarter million.
Couldn't count them.
It was 240 or 50 people showed
That's
up
right,
to hear
most
about
ever.
energy.
Yeah.
And Sharon was behind it. I mean, she set up some incredible panels, and it was really a joy to watch this. And we're going to talk about exactly what happened, what we learned, what the inner meaning of Energy Day was. It was really amazing. It was turning point stuff.
Turning point stuff.
But first, we're going to talk about the Negawatt moment because Ian Tierney is here from Hawaii Energy, and you're going to talk about art today. You got to figure how energy gets to be art. Okay, tell us, Ian.
Yeah, so Hawaii Energy, if you don't know, is the ratepayer-funded energy conservation.
Is that switch on the
program.
microphone? I want to be sure you're on. Should be toward
And,
you. Toward you.
And so we're serving all the islands of Hawaii, Lanai, Maui, Molokai, and Oahu. And so what we did was we helped basically a energy efficiency project come to fruition at the Honolulu Museum of Art. They had a number of old lamps that were in there, and through our rebates and incentives, they were able to knock the simple payback of the project down to something that looks a little reasonable. So they replaced a lot of their old incandescent, halogen, compact fluorescent lights with more energy efficient fluorescent and LEDs as well.
Did you have to be careful about lights that might damage the art?
Well, the LEDs are actually the one light that doesn't damage the art. Previously, they had to cycle the art in and out because the existing lighting was damaging the art.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah, so LEDs do not emit any UV radiation, and that's why they were selected for this project.
This sounds like something that's unprecedented. I mean, have you done this for other similar institutions around the state? Or is this kind of breaking new ground for Hawaii Energy?
We've done it for a lot of art galleries. They seem to really enjoy the lighting, but being that the Museum of Art is a nonprofit, they had to come up with a creative funding resource, and so actually previously their project in 2012 we helped them replace their air conditioning, which was the worst performing piece of equipment in their facility, and we gave them a $346,000 check for doing that project. And so the lighting was kind of the next one down there, but you know they had to get funding for it first, and so that takes some time. You can't just do everything all at once. You kind of have to do it in progression.
So on the lighting change at the museum, how much did it cost? What was the rebate? I hope you have this. What was the savings over time?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is the savings over time.
Is that the way you're telling me that you don't have the other ones?
So I think you have to look at it as, so yeah, you could look at the cost first.
Okay.
The cost is the scary number, right? I mean, the cost is the one thing you don't want to see. It's $314,000.
Okay.
That's a lot of money, right? But
The
you're
rebate?
saving $113,000 a year. So that's a 3-year payback approximately.
Yeah.
And then the rebate was $91,000.
Okay.
So you're cutting it down to a little over a 2-year simple payback, which we like to think of as a no-brainer project.
Sounds like it.
How much are they
That's very
paying
good.
now? How much are they paying now that they're saving?
Well, that's the interesting thing. Roughly, you can't really see it in the energy bills because it's very dependent on what the customer does. So if I was to look at their energy bills before and after, it's kind of a weird comparison. Maybe they have an event that they didn't have last year at this time, and it increased their energy bills. So right now, it's really just dependent on the behavior and not so much just on the lights themselves.
What's your next project, actually, Ian?
Well, I work with mainly offices, schools, and nonprofits. So my next project is going to be with We Efficiency. They're doing a project with the Hawaii Public Radio. We're also going to be working with the YWCA to do a lighting retrofit there, and the Father Damien School as well.
We got to get a think
That's
tank
it.
on that list.
Yeah.
You know? We
Right.
could do a lighting project
You
here.
could.
Could do a lighting project, Jay.
Yeah, except we already have LEDs, so.
Should
I
have
don't know.
waited.
What can you do better than
We
LEDs?
should've waited.
We should have talked to you before. Anyway, that's Leon Tierney of Hawaii Energy. And behind him in our studio gallery is sitting Rob DeVertitera.
Hi, Rob.
And hope you guys come back next week, because next week we're going to have a camera so you're not sitting in the dark and we can see the expression on your face as you make these statements, and we can evaluate your credibility and everything.
Real nervous next week.
Great, thanks, Jay. We
Okay.
look forward to being here.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks.
And we also have in our studio audience today a carryover from the last show, which was catching up in Kaka'ako, namely Henry Curtis from Life of the Land. Say hi.
Aloha, Jay.
Okay, so maybe we'll hear from Henry about some of the things that discussed today.
Be good.
Anyway, thank you, Hawaii Energy. Appreciate it. Moving on to the principal subject, which is Energy Day 2014. It's perfect that you, the co-chairs of Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, are here, because you organized this program, and we can talk about it retrospectively and see what it meant, in the landscape and in the continuum of clean energy development in the state. So I guess let me just take a moment and say, aside from the 240 people who showed up, we had 30 speakers. That's like an all-time record. That's like, putting a 3-day program into
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
It was.
It was.
It was.
And the other thing, you guys have to be complimented on this, because, these programs are often, just linear, where you tell a speaker, talk what you want about, or, here's your little subject and cover that. But no, this was more structured, and they all knew, not only what they were going to talk about, but what the guy next to them was going to talk about, and you somehow motivated them into a really incisive discussion, a thoughtful discussion, a discussion that covered new ground. It was not, nobody could ever say this was same old. So somehow you got those 30 speakers to really tell it like it is. That's extraordinary to me. So what we had here was, something unprecedented. And we actually identified some tipping points in the process that leads to it. So congratulations, actually. It was a lovely show.
Well, and you were a great MC
Oh,
as usual. That moved the
do
program
what they
along.
tell me,
so that
that's
was-
all.
But I think
That's good, too.
Sharon kind of set the stage by saying, we really want to think about where we go from here. We've been talking about a lot of this stuff for a long time, and we really need to kind of push the people that have been involved to say, well, what are the next steps, and to get both the speakers as well as the audience to say, well, what comes first, or what's the highest priority. And I think that really came off. The thing that amazed me most was that people stayed on time.
That's right.
And they were things were crisp, and as you said, Jay, they really did follow one another, so there wasn't a lot of overlap. And the fact that they knew they had each other's presentations in advance really gave them a chance to kind of sort stuff out and decide in their own heads how it all fit together. And the credit goes to Sharon as the
Everybody,
architect of
yeah.
this thing. And
Well, I think that was one big element, the high structure, the high preparation for this, not only by them, but by us collectively, the Energy Policy Forum, to make this happen. But the other thing was, if I may, and we can talk about this in greater detail later, was the live sift.
Yes.
Henry Curtis and I were talking about this in context of Kaka'ako not too long ago. And live sift is an element, I think, that helps you get to candor. It helps you get to having thoughts you never had before.
Well, and engaging the audience.
And engaging the audience, yes.
So that
Right.
there was a different dynamic.
It becomes a community of people instead of just speaker versus audience, and that was different. I mean, don't you agree? I mean, this was a different environment.
And a different dynamic, because
dynamic,
the
yeah.
questions were coming, and we also had issues identified ahead of time And maybe you could explain the origins of the live sift and how we got hooked up with them?
Well, it was actually Think
Jay.
Tech Hawaii.
Well, we have been using
because
live
you
sift all
used
year
it
in
for
our programs,
Kaka'ako. And so we said, hey, that would really work with the energy policy, Hawaii Clean Energy Day, because we have stakeholders from all over and it's diverse. That would be a great way. It's almost like a survey instantaneously, which it is. And we said, well, how could we best use that technology so that we could engage more people? Because most of their complaints in the past years has been, there's too much talking at us, not enough engagement, we don't have time for questions. And this enabled not only questions, but also engagement in terms of actions and next steps, which is really where we want to go at the end of each session.
Yeah.
And enabled that by having thought through action points first,
Right.
and then adding to it through the sessions, but also being able to see right before your eyes, which priorities just come up. I mean, you think, oh, gee, this is really high priority, and all of a sudden you see more people coming on board, and you see that I think we in total had about 153 people, because you have to have your iPad or your iPhone, and not all of them came with it.
Well, actually, they're expanding that,
Oh, really?
We met with them after the David Lasner program last week, and they're expanding to include, questions that are handed in on paper.
Oh, okay.
There'll be a way to
Good.
input those.
Oh, good.
So that even if you don't have a phone with you or a laptop, you can still submit
Because
questions.
it was frustrating for those who didn't, although we
Yeah.
had a couple of iPads there for people to use, but
Yeah.
it was just too much to get.
Let's digress for a minute on LiveSift. LiveSift, it's Alex Burgo. He's a PhD at, I forget what it is, maybe business school or something, maybe
Business school.
computer science.
I think it was business school.
Yeah.
Business school.
And he and a couple other guys have put this together, and we discovered them sitting in that chair, Mike. Alex Burgo has been in that chair
Oh,
a number
really?
of times,
Uh-huh.
yeah. And so we took it a little further, and starting, I think, with our luncheon series this year, we sort of committed to him and he to us. And each program we've included him, and it's gotten better in each one. So I was happy to see you use it in the Energy Policy Forum program. So the thing about it is that you get these instant questions, which are selected by the person the moderator or the person who vets the question, which is what you and Carl Freeman did.
Yes.
Freeman did that.
Which, it's really important that somebody
help.
look at that. And since actually the program he did on Clean Energy Day, he has made it more powerful. He's always making changes. So this is really going somewhere. And there are two kinds of, I would say, voting type questions where the audience can speak. One of them is what is it? It's the percentage of votes for items on a list of up to 6 elements. So if you give them a list of 6 elements, people can vote, and then it shows in a pie chart how many votes for each one of the elements.
Right.
Okay, that's voting on a multiple choice list. The other one is actually more interesting to me.
It's a ranking.
The ranking. Give them the same 6 elements, and you ask people to rank the ones that appeal to them, or in order
So
of
you've got the
importance.
priorities right there.
But and Henry and I were talking about this. What is that exactly? It's voting.
It is voting.
It's a
yeah.
straw vote. So Q&A, that's nice. Immediate Q&A is really nice. But voting, when you know what's in the mind of this organism in front of you that sits there 240 strong, where you can make a pretty good estimate about what they are thinking, now that's something. When President Obama was first elected, first term, he wrote a piece, and I was traveling, and I read this piece in such great detail about the future of voting. And he talked about the fact that it would be a convergence with internet and networking. And so someday soon, we wouldn't have to have an electoral college. And someday soon, we wouldn't even have to have all these layers of representative government, not only in this country, but elsewhere. And if you wanted to lay a proposition before the House, everyone, they could all vote. So, not that that's happening. It isn't really happening today, although you can certainly express yourself and be heard on social media. But point is that Alex Burgo and LiveSift takes us closer to that model. And that's what's really exciting.
It's a
about
real
it.
Yes,
democracy.
Yes, right. I know.
Pure
it is.
democracy.
Pure democracy, that's
That's
right.
right.
And people come in the room and they see this, and somehow it lights them up, and somehow it gets them to think that they may have a real effect here on this conversation. by the questions and by their answers. And so I think
But
this
it's
had,
also because it's anonymous, so it's
Yes.
not like raising your hand. So I can say really what I feel,
yes,
and I can just see it. Oops, it moved the dial.
Yeah.
So I think that both of that gets people much more engaged in the conversation and also
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah.
rather than just sort of sitting there.
come up with all kinds of things. And I mean, of course, they're going to be vetted. You're not going to say stinky things and have those questions asked in public.
But I was surprised, just the raw questions that were coming, the question and answer portion, the level of civility was very high. I think there was sort of one rude question out of 120.
That was mine.
That was yours.
No, I think the one, because
Oh, you're going to get me out of my car?
Transportation.
Yes,
Yeah, get me out of
that's
your
the
car,
one. I
yeah.
wrote that. I wanted to sort of shake the pot a little, so I wrote that. And then I started looking at you and Carl Friedman right next to you to see when you get to that question. I said, whoa! And I saw you jump. And Alex jumped, everybody, because it was a pushy question.
Yeah.
The question was, are you kidding me? You're going to get me out of my car? I'm never getting
What's
out of
it
my
gonna
car.
take?
You just make me get out of my car. Make a stink if you make me get out of my car. Yeah, that was me.
That was good.
But it wasn't
That was
really
good.
rude.
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. No, I think we did a survey in 2006 when we were looking at energy efficient transportation, and a lot of people said we're not going to ride the bus. No matter what you do, we're not going to ride the bus, and that was like 50% at that time.
And they have to answer that.
You know?
They have to tell us how they're going to get by that kind of a
Yeah.
resistance. But speaking of resistance, we have to take a break.
Oh, that was,
Okay.
Okay.
We have Mike Hamden. We have Sharon Moriwaki of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum co-chairs. This is Think Tech Talks. We're talking, of course, on Wednesday about the state of clean energy here, and we're focusing on Energy Day 2014. It's the three of us, but also in the shadows somewhere is Henry Curtis, who's staying over from the last show, and he is in our special gallery. Okay, we'll be right. What say, Henry? Okay, we're going to go to a break now. We'll be right back. We're back. We're live. We're here with Mike Hamden and Sharon Moriwaki of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, and we're talking about the state of clean energy. And Energy Day 2014 took place on July 22nd at Laniakea. And with us in our studio audience, we have Henry Curtis, and he actually has an answer he would like to present to the question of how you're going to get me out of my car. This is with respect to transportation.
You combine live sift and smart grids with smart cars, where you get in the car and you drive to your destination, and at the end, your car explains how many red lights you went through, how many stop signs you violated, how many times you sped, and you get a ticket for each amount, and it's automatically deducted through PayPal, and when your bill is too high, you get into public transportation.
that's great.
You know, it's funny, but it's going to happen.
Right.
The van cams are coming back, Henry.
With technology.
Right on the dashboard.
Right. And you'll only know when you get your PayPal bill. Okay, well, let's go on more. So,
Okay.
aside from this great environment that the Energy Policy Forum created for a really good discussion and good communication, what were the high points, of the program? What were the things, the aha moments, if you will, where people really found a sea change of some consequence?
I think just kind of stepping
Give the structure,
back.
yeah.
Stepping back. What we're trying to do is as a theme is getting our act together. We've been going down the road, and what really have we done? We've been talking about leadership. We've been talking about, we've got to get more renewables. We've been doing well with our RPS and our energy efficiency. But what really, where are we? And really need to take stock and say, okay, have we or have we not done it? And where shall we be focusing? And so we tried to get the four groups together, the panels together, looking at that, our technology, our renewables on the grid, the regulatory reform, transportation, which has always been out there, and we have to look at some options other than kind of kicking the can down the road in
Literally.
transportation. Yeah.
Gas can down the road.
And finally, how far are we in implementing clean energy? So the panels were so structured so that we would really hone in on those issues and what has been done and and most importantly, what action steps can be taken the next year? And this is an election year, this is a campaign year. So we really wanted to focus on these issues so that whoever was running could see we're serious about this. It's no more, just kind of saying we're doing well. We've got to say, what are we really doing and where do we need to go?
Yeah.
So we started off with trying to bring in speakers who would paint that broad base for each of these areas, and then having the panelists talk about what has been done or not been done, mostly what hasn't been done and what needs to be done. So that's how we started with renewables on the grid.
So the first one was a panel on renewables and sort of what are the next steps with that. A second one was what needs to happen to the energy grid, basically to accommodate more
the
renewables.
Regulatory,
And then
and transportation was a biggie.
Uh-huh.
That was and we had a whole session or a conference on it last year, and where have we been? Not very far. And then finally, what does it take to implement?
Right.
Implement.
Yeah. It was a progression.
yeah,
And
it
each
was.
one built on the previous one. So by the time you got to the end, you really had a full measure of issues to cover, and that really led to some hard advice, action points, as you say, Sharon. And the action points were the ones that live showed up on the screen. It was really interesting to rate them.
Right.
But did you mention? I didn't hear you mention the update part of it.
Oh, yeah.
The update. I found that very valuable.
People really enjoyed that
Yeah.
because it just showed the
But
gamut
say
of
what
things.
it was. What was it?
So we had updates from the state, from the counties, from the Renewables Association, from utilities, and just where are we? They had a chance to tell us what did they do in the last year and what's on the plate this coming year. And it was done in 5-minute, real focused.
And
it worked. And everybody
marched
stayed on.
across the stage
I was
and did their
surprised they
thing,
did.
and it was all terrific.
I think this is becoming sort of our process each year.
Well, I
they're
mean-
getting it.
You threaten them if they go over time, and then he sits on them when they do. That's the way it works.
It works. It's starting to work. It's starting to work. It did work actually this year.
Well, without naming names, there was one speaker last year who wouldn't stop, so I sort of shuffled across the stage.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah,
And
I
I
do.
shuffled right up to him and grabbed him on the arm and tried to pull him off.
I
So
know.
then he understood why I was there, and the
And
crowd thought that was
and I
pretty funny.
reminded him this year about it.
And he listened this year, and he finished on time this
It
year.
was was earlier than,
Yeah,
than
4
time.
seconds left.
But I thought that there were people who made some remarkable comments about what was happening. We are in, one Senator Mike Gabbard called it a crisis. That's serious. Nobody's actually said that before. And then there was all kinds of, Jim Lazar was the keynote. And he pointed out there was a case involving the Market Street buses that held for the proposition that if a utility can't make money, it should go away. That was pretty edgy.
I think one of the speakers says there's no vision, and we really need to do something about it with our technology and with really getting people together. So now people are coming. The consumer is finally coming into play in terms of how we actually deal with energy and electricity, and not just the engineers saying, okay, this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
I think a couple things are pushing that. One is that just the cost of energy is just, we really have consumer fatigue on the cost issue. And we can wave our arms about renewable energy, but we're going to get pushback. The second thing is I think the HECO and the other utilities are starting to realize with this kind of flight from the grid that seems to be taking place that they're going to have to change their business model or they're not going to survive. And and that was a kind of an undercurrent to what people were saying, and Jim recognized that as a keynote speaker in talking about the fact that we're going to have to change business models to make this whole thing work.
Well, you look at the utilities as how Hawaii Energy Utilities are owned, managed, and regulated, need substantial improvement. That's 60% of the people there. I mean, it's just like shot up there. That people know that something's wrong, it has to be done. Substantial improvement, not just tweak it. And so I think with that as the kind of the groundswell, even the utilities stayed till the end to listen to how can this be done. They were saying, oh, the first questions during our preparation was, oh, let's just see how they want to be informed. But it was more than informing the customer. It was reducing the cost, increasing energy efficiency or renewable energy on the grid. So there really is a consumer, more knowledgeable consumer base, plus also looking at the cost and saying there must be some way that you can't have this big utility working the way it has been working. We've got to change it.
Yeah, and I think it's basically a consumer rebellion on the whole issue of cost.
Very
And a
close to it.
recognition of the rebellion.
Yeah.
You know, it's real. What I found is the environment that was created, you know, all the elements of that environment, was that A, people were not going to get up there and drone on to, quote, inform us. I mean, there's a little of that, but not much, not nearly as much as in other programs other years. And B, I think the speakers were sort of acknowledging that people had a voice, and they really felt, I mean, they seemed to fit, that they had to listen. They were obligated to listen to the voice. And so I think what happened by accident or by intention is that there was an actual conversation taking place, as that was unique.
And I don't know how much the live SIFT couldn't have contributed to that entirely. I mean, that's
Just one
something
element.
that's been coming.
And
But it really showed.
And from the Maui conference, when we were looking at the Maui conference, and what it lacked was the consumer input. It was expensive.
right.
It was neighbor island.
Right.
So part of that just surfaced that we really do need to address that, and what is the impact on the consumer is become front and center now, even for the utilities. And Jay Ignacio, who was there, is one of the other keynoters from Big Island, acknowledged that, and he actually said, I'm here to find out, so at least there's an acknowledgement that we've got to change.
Yeah, he and Alan Arakawa, Mayor of Maui,
Mayor of Maui,
were our luncheon speakers, and I thought they were very good. It was a good idea to have them both. Sometimes you have one luncheon speaker, it's a little bit heavy. In this case, it was grazing.
And it was, but it was good because we've got them, and which is what I like is to bring in the neighbor island, because theirs is a different perspective, and also they're small enough and they're close enough to what's happening that they bring that perspective of the consumer base and what that means, and they're close to their customers, so they really do bring a whole nother perspective than us here.
Didn't you feel that the neighbor islands made a substantial contribution to this
Very big,
conference,
very
Oh,
to this
yeah.
panel
Very big.
program? I mean, they were telling us stuff we didn't know. They were telling us that they were doing things that we haven't done, we in Oahu.
That's
So
right.
they knew a lot, and they were doing a lot.
Council member Yukimura about multimodal.
Former council member Yukimura. She didn't
Maybe
win the
number
election,
7, she
sorry.
number 8, was she
Regardless
number
how
8?
good her comments
Was it
were.
number 8 or number 7 of the council? Anyway, she brought this whole thing of multimodal transportation that they were doing. They have a plan. They just need to get some support and funding. So part of it is how do we support good things that are happening without imposing other kinds of structures on them. Let's just fund good things that are happening in the counties.
The other thing is that I think the things that were suggested in terms of moving forward were much more nuanced than they've been in the past. I mean, in years past, people waved their arms saying we need to have more renewable energy. But when you look at the priorities that people listed, both that came out of the panels, the number one priority for the renewables was implement time of use rates,
Right.
electricity
Much
rates.
more specific. Yeah.
That was very interesting.
Yeah.
Yep, and to focus conservation on high cost hours. I mean, people, I think, are getting much more of a sense as to how we really need to steer this boat and not just wave our arms and with
Some actual
generalizations.
solutions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was very
I was very
constructive
impressed.
stuff. Yeah.
And part of that was Jim. I mean, Jim sort of helped that along because he's so knowledgeable and he had specifics in his keynote.
Right, and he was not holding back.
No,
No.
he was
Nobody
not.
was holding.
Nobody,
Well,
well.
mostly nobody was holding
Mostly
back.
know that.
Okay, that's Mike Hamnet and Sharon Moriwaki of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. And in the gallery, we have Henry Curtis. Henry, when we come back, I'd like to know how you think we're doing so far, if you don't mind me asking. This is Think Tech Hawaii. We're doing Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, on Wednesday, because we always do. And this is a discussion of Energy Day 2014. We'll be right back after this short break. Okay, we're back. We're live. This is Jay Fidel, Think Tech Talks. In Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, which actually best defines it right now as far as I'm concerned. We are the state of clean energy. I like that. This is all your fault. We're talking about Energy Day 2014 with Mike Hamnett and Sharon Moriwaki of Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. They're co-chairs. And we have Henry Curtis in the room, and he's been listening, and I wanted to ask him how we're doing and what comments he may have so far regarding this discussion. Henry?
Aloha, Jay. I think the show is hitting some major key points, and one of them is that there is a real change in the community, that the community is far more sophisticated and far broader and more involved than it's ever been before, and that has been one of the driving forces that is shaping policy.
That is very
We all
good.
agree with that.
That's
Yeah, we sure
good.
do.
It is.
And that harkens back to what you said at the last show, too, the fact that it's really the community that's got to speak and move things along, and not just a few people.
Yeah, then everybody is part of it. We take ownership of it. You know, it's
Right.
ours, and it's ours anyway, but it's better to act. Anyway, speaking of action, so we came out with action points. I think it'd be helpful if you could read the action points
Okay.
from the list that came from Live Sift. What were they actually?
The top three from the first panel on renewables, as I mentioned before, one was implementing time of use electricity rates. And that's to really give benefit to people who are going to conserve. Second is the focused conservation measures, and everybody agrees conservation is the best investment, but focused conservation measures on high cost hours, the peak hours when demand's highest. The third one, which I thought was interesting and unexpected to me, was phasing down solar incentives. I mean, there really is a feeling that solar, photovoltaics in particular, have kind of taken the state by storm.
That's very interesting.
And the electric utilities are kind of struggling, and it's gone far beyond, solar penetration has gone far beyond what any of the utilities ever said was possible. In fact, some utilities on the mainland say it's impossible that we've got as much as we have on the systems.
And yet, you know, they said that 79%, almost 80%, said we should increase measures to integrate PV.
That's right.
So, you know, on the one hand, maybe it's that we don't need incentives.
Well, not as much anyway.
Yeah,
Because
we should just
solar
integrate it
we
now,
should
yeah,
integrate
yeah.
it and make it less expensive for people to get on the grid and actually stay on the grid. Because the alternative is to get off the grid and make your own energy off grid.
There was a fair amount of discussion on that, and on storage too.
Yes, right.
Storage.
But I mean, those things are kind of in the offing, and they've got everybody concerned about where all this stuff is going. So I think in the first panel, those were kind of the high points. For the second panel is getting our utilities act together. There's a question
Mike,
about...
you want to hold that up? That's the report that came from Live Sift. Just hold it up at the camera.
I gave you.
That's your camera over there, just so that people can see what it looks like. It's very nice. It's a colored chart, and if you attend one of these programs and sign up on Live Sift and give them your email, they'll send you the whole report of everything that passed through Live Sift during the program, which is really helpful. Which is part of a takeaway thing, which is good.
And this is on our website, huh?
It is on our website.
So on the Energy Policy Forum website, the whole report is there, and you can see kind of what came out of the panel discussions, as well as the voting on priorities that people in the audience did.
You have more
Yeah.
action points?
Oh, just one more on the utilities, the high renewables on the grid. That again, it's the customer driving it. Decreased customer cost was the biggest. What they thought in terms of smart grid, because we asked about smart grid as well, and they felt that smart grid would in fact reduce customer costs. Again, it's always looking at customer savings and customer driven.
And that's a much more pervasive theme than it ever has been before, even among the energy group.
Yeah,
So
because these aren't people who are out there, consumers mostly. Some are, but a lot of them are stakeholders in the energy community. So this is across the board coming
This is
through.
going to be a great book someday
It is.
about the tortuous adventure of Hawaii, coming to energy sufficiency. Really remarkable. And I think one of the reasons why the conversation has shifted and why the public is more involved, as Henry says, and we all agree, is because there hasn't been a single leadership organization, aside from the Energy Policy Forum, that has led the way. So the public has seen the vacuum and is filling the vacuum, and it's a good result, however you get there.
Yeah, and I think we have the RPS, the Remote Portfolio Standards, and the Energy Efficiency Portfolio Standards, plus the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative. But that's in such a macro level and big targets that it hasn't really sifted down. So now the community is much more involved, and they're saying, we really should be doing this. And that I think has come about since 2008 when the Clean Energy Initiative was first discussed and adopted. That now by bringing the community in, the so-called community will is now there to actually get something going. I mean, people are now, legislators did not really talk about it before. And now clean energy is something that's on the table. And we are looking at the lack of leadership, and maybe we need to be doing something much more forceful in terms of putting the money there where our mouth is,
Well, and the second panel, the whole question of what the electric utilities are going to look like in Hawaii in the future was really front and center. Because, we asked people how utilities are owned, managed, and regulated. How is that system working? And, 60% of the people said it needs substantial improvement and change so that the status quo is no longer acceptable, and people realize. And I had a sense from the people from Hawaiian Electric and from KIUC that they recognize that very well, and they realize that they're going to have to change their business models in order to survive.
Yeah, and I think the shift is that it's not only the consumers are much more knowledgeable and speaking out, it's the utilities are coming to understand that, hey, yeah, they really have to deal with the public. And I think whether it's what happened at PUC and the advisory council and so forth at the IRP, but they're recognizing we've got to do something, and that's a major shift that really is, I think, important. It's now starting to get home, to them, and trying to look for solutions.
When we first started this whole thing, it was a much smaller circle of people, and it was kind of inside baseball. So it was the people who had been involved in, including Henry and others, that had been involved in contested case hearings with the PUC. But we did not have the broad involvement, and I think Henry's right in terms of the community is actually recognizing that it's going to have to show the leadership because we're not getting it from anyplace else. I think it's a very positive thing.
Okay, we got 5 minutes left. I just want to paint the picture that I see and ask you guys the question that emerges, including Henry. So we did have an extraordinary program. It was an extraordinary program. And we came up with a lot of straight talking and really important and analytical statements, thoughtful statements by a lot of people who are, familiar. So this was the real deal. And then we have the benefit of the live SIFT results and the action points. It's, to some extent, it's documented, it's memorialized. It's on your website.
Right.
Anyone listening here today could go and look at your website, hawaiienergypolicy.org. Am I getting that right?
hawaiienergypolicy.hawaii.edu.
I was only testing you.
I was listening.
Anyway, so here we are. We've had this program. We have this written down. We have the action points rated by, an important slice of the community that came down, a larger than ordinary slice of the community. And this is something that people always ask, so what now? So what's going to happen now? You guys, you're talking about action points, so give me action. What's going to happen with the action points? How do we move this forward right now from today? How do we make it happen? How do we, continue the lift of this program? What do we do?
I think part of what has to happen from a practical standpoint for the forum is we've got to get the forum executive committee and then the whole forum together to say, okay, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to put to the legislature for the session? Things that the legislature can nudge along or do. What can we do in terms of getting more public education awareness about where things are going, and to get more citizen engagement in what's going on? And also to make people aware of the kinds of things that are pending before the Public Utilities Commission, and decisions that are really, that they're talking about here, that are kind of waiting to be decided upon, and to get the kind of input that's needed to get decisions made. I think that's...
Yeah. In terms of practical matters, the Energy Policy Forum uses what comes out of the Clean Energy Day, and that's why we focus on action points all the time. But this is the first time we've had something that's so documented that we could actually see what
And
kinds
that
of
makes
steps.
a greater moment.
Easier
The
to-
fact that
to
it's
say
written
we've
down,
got
it's
to
public,
follow
it is
this.
public, yeah.
So we do look at initiatives and how we might go forward. And this is the big picture where people are looking at transportation. Well, we've got to do something about transportation, ground transportation, multimodal transportation. If in fact the counties are doing good things, how might we bring that up and have
Get
that
support for the counties to do that.
to do
Yes,
that, and then
yes.
bring that on a statewide stage.
Yes.
So I think
So
that's,
much is possible
that's,
now.
Yeah, yes.
That, you compare that with the, what is it, the IRP process.
Right. Well, and quite frankly, it puts pressure on us, not just Sharon and me, but the forum as a whole, to say,
To
okay,
engage.
you've got this information, now
Now
you
we've got to do
guys gotta
something.
do something
We've
about
got to do
it.
something about it. Right. And
But
we
that's the
usually
kind
do
of pressure that's got to be on public
Yeah.
officials too.
And if we could get, part of it is that the forum does meet in October to do some strategic planning around these
So that's
issues.
the next step.
So that's
But
the
this
next
is the agenda.
But this is,
Yeah.
and
That's
this
great.
is focusing
So
where
October
we're going to
is
go.
only a few weeks away.
No,
I hate
it
to
is.
say
I
that.
know, that's right.
Okay, Henry, your turn. Can you give us some feedback on this? What do you think?
I think there's two important pieces of the puzzle that's going to be entered before the October forum meeting. First is Hawaiian Electric has to actually present their plan on August 26th. So we get to see how all the input has affected them. And then in September is the Asia Pacific Clean Energy Summit, which is always, of all the conferences, one of the major ones in Hawaii that really presents cutting edge issues. And so those will both help lay down the foundation
That's a
for
good
the
point.
forum's next meeting.
Thank you, yeah,
That's
that's very
great.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Henry.
Think Tank is going to the summit. We're going to bring cameras. Sharon and I are going to go as press. And we are going to make an OC-16 movie about what we find over there at the summit. So you'll be hearing more about that. Maybe we can get him on the show, too.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike Hamnett. Thank you, Sharon Moriwaki, Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. Thank you, Henry Curtis, Life
Thank
of the
you,
Land.
Henry.
This has been Wednesday, Hawaii State of Clean Energy, discussing Energy Day 2014. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
aloha.
Jay. Aloha.
Thanks, Jay. Aloha, thank you, Henry.
Thank you, Henry.
Aloha.
Thank you, everyone.
My name is DJ. I'm growing up with Think Tech.